Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you are watching for the first time, welcome, because today we are going into territory that I think even the most dedicated and well-informed members of ARMY have not fully processed yet, even though the story has been circulating in Korean media and in fashion industry publications for a few days now. And the reason I say not fully processed is not because people have not seen the numbers. The numbers have been shared widely and they have generated the kind of reaction that very large numbers tend to generate, which is a combination of pride and disbelief and the specific kind of ARMY satisfaction that comes from seeing something you always believed confirmed in terms that the rest of the world cannot dismiss or qualify or explain away. The reason I say not fully processed is because I think the significance of what those numbers represent goes deeper than the immediate reaction to them captures, and today I want to take the time to explain exactly what $3.4 million in 48 hours means, not just as a data point but as a statement about where Jungkook currently stands in the global cultural and commercial landscape. And I want to do that by working through what Korean media actually said about it and why their framing of the story matters as much as the number itself. Let us start with the number. $3.4 million. That is the media impact value, commonly abbreviated as MIV, that the 2026 Jungkook for Calvin Klein collection generated in the 48 hours immediately following its launch. Now MIV is a specific metric developed by the fashion industry analytics platform Launchmetrics, and it is worth spending a moment explaining what it actually measures because the number becomes significantly more impressive when you understand exactly what it is counting. MIV does not measure sales revenue. It is not a direct measure of how many units were sold or how much money changed hands in retail transactions. MIV measures the estimated monetary value of the media coverage and public exposure that a product launch or a campaign generates. It takes into account every article written about the collection, every social media post from every account at every level of follower count, every mention in any media format across digital and print platforms, every piece of content that was produced in response to the launch, and it assigns a monetary value to each of those pieces of coverage based on the reach and the engagement and the advertising equivalent value of the platform it appeared on. In other words, MIV answers the question of how much it would have cost to purchase the equivalent advertising exposure through paid channels rather than generating it organically through a product launch. And the answer for the 2026 Jungkook for Calvin Klein collection was $3.4 million. In the first 48 hours. Before most of the world's fashion publications had even finished writing their reviews. To put that number in context, because context is everything when it comes to understanding what $3.4 million in 48 hours actually represents, let me give you some comparison points from the fashion industry. Major brand campaigns from established luxury houses typically target MIV benchmarks in the range of a few $100,000 to low millions over their full campaign period, which can run for weeks or months. The fact that the Jungkook for Calvin Klein collection generated $3.4 million in just 2 days is not just impressive within the context of K-pop collaborations or celebrity brand partnerships. It is impressive within the broader context of the fashion industry as a whole, full stop. And the Korean media outlet No Manners magazine, which reported on the numbers, was not framing them as a K-pop story or a BTS fan interest story. They were framing them as a fashion industry story, as a statement about the specific and unusual kind of commercial and media impact that Jungkook generates when he activates his platform around a product. Because not every celebrity activation produces this kind of number. Not even close. What makes the $3.4 million MIV particularly striking is the mechanism through which it was generated. The coverage that produces high MIV numbers typically comes from a combination of major fashion media publications, which have high per-impression advertising equivalent values, and high follower social media accounts, which have high per-post advertising equivalent values. For a collection to generate $3.4 million in 48 hours, both of those streams need to be firing simultaneously and at high volume. And for the Jungkook for Calvin Klein collection, both of them absolutely were. Fashion Week Daily, WWD, Complex, and multiple other major fashion publications ran the story within hours of the launch. The social media activation was even more extraordinary, with content about the collection being produced by accounts ranging from major fashion influencers to dedicated ARMY fan accounts to completely general interest accounts that encountered the collection organically and chose to post about it because it was genuinely interesting content. That combination of top-tier fashion media coverage and organic social media activation at scale is exactly what a brand dreams of when they launch a collaboration. And it happened because of Jungkook. The Korean media framing of this story is the part that I find most significant and most worth spending time on, because No Manners magazine did not describe Jungkook's impact on the collection launch in the language that typically gets used to describe successful celebrity brand partnerships. They did not say he is a popular idol who drove a lot of traffic to the Calvin Klein website. They did not say he is a highly effective brand ambassador whose fan community generated strong social media numbers. They said something qualitatively different and quantitatively more significant. They said Jungkook is increasingly viewed as more than just an artist. They said he now has a market presence that rivals major global brands. Let me sit with that for a moment because I think it deserves to be heard clearly. A market presence that rivals major global brands. Not a market presence that is impressive for a K-pop artist. Not a market presence that is remarkable for someone from the Korean entertainment industry. A market presence that rivals major global brands. Full stop. Without qualification. Without the caveat that contextualizes it as a K-pop achievement rather than a general market achievement. What does it mean to have a market presence that rivals major global brands? In the world of commercial and marketing analytics, a brand's market presence is measured by a combination of factors that include name recognition across demographics and geographies, the degree to which the brand generates organic media coverage as opposed to requiring paid media to maintain visibility, the loyalty and the engagement of the brand's consumer community, the ability of the brand to drive commercial outcomes through product launches and campaigns, and the intangible quality, sometimes called brand equity, that represents the premium that consumers are willing to pay simply because of the brand association rather than for any utilitarian reason. Major global brands like Apple, Nike, Louis Vuitton, and yes, Calvin Klein, score highly across all of these dimensions. They have built their market presence over decades of consistent investment in brand building and brand communication. And the Korean media is now saying that Jungkook has a market presence that rivals them. Think about what that means in practical terms. It means that when Jungkook's name is attached to a product, it generates the kind of media coverage and consumer engagement that major global brands typically spend enormous resources to achieve. It means that the community of people who are engaged with Jungkook as a cultural and commercial entity behaves more like the community of consumers loyal to a major brand than like the fanbase of a conventional celebrity. It means that his name carries a commercial weight that is independent of any specific product or any specific campaign, a weight that comes from years of cultural investment and cultural presence and the specific kind of authentic connection that makes people care about what he does and what he endorses and what he wears and what he creates. And it means that in the 48 hours following a product launch, that market presence is capable of generating $3.4 million in media impact value because the world is genuinely interested in what Jungkook is doing and genuinely willing to engage with content about him at a scale that translates into those kinds of numbers. The specific context of the Calvin Klein collaboration makes the numbers even more interesting to analyze because Calvin Klein is not a small or struggling brand that needed a celebrity partnership to drive visibility. Calvin Klein is one of the most recognizable fashion brands in the world, with a history that stretches back to the late 1960s and a global footprint that includes major retail presence in virtually every significant fashion market. When Calvin Klein chooses a brand ambassador, they are not choosing someone to lend their brand credibility to an unknown quantity. They are making a decision about who has the kind of cultural presence that is compatible with and complementary to their own substantial brand identity. And the decision to partner with Jungkook, which the CEO of the parent company PVH and the leadership of Calvin Klein made deliberately and with the specific goal of creating something that was, in their own words, different from a normal brand deal, is a decision that the $3.4 million MIV has now validated in the most concrete possible terms. The collection itself, which features the CKJK branding that combines Calvin Klein's iconic CK logo with Jungkook's initials in a gesture of genuine creative partnership rather than mere celebrity endorsement, generated a response that was consistent with everything the CEO promised when he described his vision for the collaboration as something that would take different forms over time and would not feel like a standard ambassador agreement. The pieces in the collection, which include denim, leather jackets with Jungkook's name embossed on the back, and the exclusive underwear styles available only at flagship stores in Harajuku, Soho, and the Champs-Élysées, sold out in under 30 minutes and crashed the Calvin Klein website at the moment of the drop. That is not an ambassador campaign. That is a cultural event. And cultural events generate $3.4 million in MIV in 48 hours. The Harajuku flagship store event on June 4th is also part of the story that the MIV numbers are telling, because the scene outside that store before Jungkook's arrival was described by everyone who was there as something extraordinary. A massive crowd had gathered throughout the day, with fans and fashion enthusiasts and curious bystanders filling the area around the Harajuku store simply on the basis of social media reports that Jungkook might appear. No official schedule had been announced. Calvin Klein had not confirmed his attendance. The crowd formed entirely on the basis of organic information flow and the specific quality of anticipation that Jungkook generates wherever he goes. And when he arrived, the store became what PVH Japan's president described as the main event in a social media post that was itself widely shared and contributed to the ongoing MIV generation. That organic crowd, that organic anticipation, that organic media moment generated by a single person's unannounced arrival at a store, is part of what the $3.4 million is measuring. It is measuring the real-world commercial and media value of the kind of presence that Jungkook carries, a presence so significant that it transforms a retail location into a news event simply by showing up. I want to talk about what the MIV metric specifically measures in the context of brand comparisons because I think understanding the comparison No Manners magazine is making helps explain why it is so significant. When they say Jungkook's market presence rivals major global brands, they are using language that comes from the analytics framework that MIV is part of. In that framework, individual celebrities and brand ambassadors are sometimes analyzed using the same metrics that are applied to brands themselves, because the most powerful celebrity-brand partnerships effectively create a new combined brand entity whose market presence exceeds either party's individual baseline. When a major global fashion brand partners with a celebrity and the resulting collaboration generates MIV at the level that the Jungkook for Calvin Klein collection generated it, the analytics framework starts to treat that celebrity not as a marketing channel or a brand activator but as a brand presence in their own right, someone whose name and identity and cultural authority are generating commercial value at the scale that brands typically generate it. And $3.4 million in 48 hours puts Jungkook squarely in that category. The parallel with what happened when Jungkook collaborated with Calvin Klein in previous partnerships is instructive here as well. The pattern has been consistent. Jungkook activates, the numbers are extraordinary, the fashion industry pays attention, and the result is a deepening of the relationship between him and the brand that reflects both parties' recognition that what they have together is more valuable and more durable than a standard transactional celebrity endorsement. The CEO of Hublet described this explicitly when he talked about the Jungkook partnership as something different from any previous brand relationship he had pursued, something characterized by shared ambition and genuine creative alignment rather than commercial convenience. And the MIV numbers from the Calvin Klein collection confirm that whatever is happening in that creative alignment, it is translating into commercial impact at the highest level. For ARMY who have been following Jungkook's commercial and cultural evolution over the years, this story sits in a specific context that gives it additional meaning beyond the impressive raw numbers. There has been a narrative in certain spaces that suggests K-pop artists, including BTS members, derive their commercial value primarily from their dedicated fanbase and that their impact is therefore real but bounded, impressive within the K-pop context but not genuinely comparable to the kind of cultural and commercial force that major Western artists or major global brands represent. The $3.4 million MIV story, framed by Korean media in the specific terms of Jungkook's market presence rivaling major global brands, is a direct and data-backed refutation of that narrative. It is not saying Jungkook's fans are enthusiastic, though they absolutely are. It is saying that the media and commercial ecosystem as a whole, including fashion publications and industry analytics platforms whose audiences and whose metrics extend far beyond the K-pop fandom, is generating value at the scale that major global brands generate when they activate their full market presence. That is a different claim. And it is supported by the numbers. The 48-hour timeframe is also worth thinking about carefully because it speaks to something specific about how Jungkook's market presence operates that is distinct from the way most celebrity brand activations work. Most major brand collaborations generate their highest MIV in a distributed pattern over weeks or months, with an initial spike at launch followed by ongoing coverage as the product becomes available in different markets, as reviews are published, as social media conversations develop. The $3.4 million being concentrated in 48 hours suggests something different, an intensity of immediate response that reflects not just enthusiasm but genuine cultural urgency. People were not waiting to decide how they felt about the collection. They had feelings immediately, strong feelings, and they expressed those feelings in media formats that translated into MIV at extraordinary speed. That kind of immediate, intense, concentrated response is characteristic of cultural events rather than commercial campaigns, and it is another piece of evidence for the Korean media's framing of Jungkook's presence as something that has moved beyond the artist category into something closer to the brand category in its market dynamics. What happens next is perhaps the most interesting question to ask in light of all of this, because the $3.4 million in 48 hours is a moment in an ongoing story rather than an endpoint. The Calvin Klein CEO's description of the partnership as something that will take different forms over time, that both parties are building with ambition and with explicit intention to do things differently than standard brand deals do them, suggests that what we have seen so far is not the full expression of what this collaboration is capable of producing. The Harajuku event, the collection launch, the MIV numbers are all impressive. But they are also, if the CEO's framing is accurate, the beginning rather than the culmination. And if the beginning generates $3.4 million in MIV in 48 hours and crashes the Calvin Klein website and fills the streets of Harajuku with crowds before any official schedule is announced, it is genuinely difficult to imagine what the fully realized version of this partnership will produce when both parties bring their full creative ambitions to bear over the longer period that the CEO described. No Manners magazine called it. The fashion industry is starting to call it. The analytics platforms are calling it. And the numbers, which do not have opinions or fandom affiliations or cultural biases but simply count the media coverage and the commercial engagement that a name generates when it is attached to a product, are calling it louder than anyone. Jungkook is not just an artist with a brand deal anymore. He is a market presence that rivals the biggest brands in the world. He is a name that generates $3.4 million in media impact value in 48 hours. He is the reason the Calvin Klein website crashed, the reason the Harajuku streets filled up before any announcement was made, the reason a collection sells out in under 30 minutes and fashion publications run their coverage before they have finished reading the press release. He is, in the language of the analytics framework that the fashion industry uses to measure these things, a brand. Not a brand ambassador. A brand. And the numbers proved it. In 48 hours. $3.4 million. Just like that. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. Please hit the like button if these numbers gave you the kind of pride they gave me, leave a comment below with your reaction to the $3.4 million MIV story and what you think it means for the future of the Jungkook and Calvin Klein partnership. Subscribe to the channel if you are not already here because there is so much more content coming about the Ararang era and everything that is happening around it, and take care of yourselves. Purple you always. Purple Heart.